Bisprint po. Yes po. So yun, palagpakan natin no, si Sir Jamie Garcia.
I don't have any PowerPoint. Instead, I have parang kodigo. This actually is from our website, how to get your book published by the UP Press. So I'll just distribute this. This explains everything, actually. There's nothing more to say. I will explain to you what the UP Press is and how different we are from commercial presses. And you will have two publishers from those two types of presses, no? Bisprint and Anvil, speaking to you later in the week. UP Press is very different from those two presses because we are not a commercial press. We are publishing books that need to be published even if they are not entirely sellable. Do you understand that? That if you think about asking me what kinds of books do I prefer to publish, I can't tell you what, right? Because I am not a commercial publisher, I don't have any preference. No? The books we publish are books that pass our very strict editorial evaluation. And so we can take risks, and we have taken risks. We publish so many books, our bodega is full of books, we're trying to get rid of them. But the point is that we need to do that because there has to be, at least in this country, one such press that will publish books that are deemed important by the best university in the country, okay, even if they are not exactly marketable in the immediate sense. Because of course, there's still hope that these books will be sold somewhere down the line, and they are selling, except very, very glacially, particularly the poetry titles. We still have units of poetry books that came out 10 years ago. Can you imagine? So if during our anniversary month, which is March, you will find them being sold at really bargain prices, okay? And they're still not being bought. That's crazy. Fiction gets bought. Actually, I have to say that our most sellable books are actually, well, the best-selling author is the editor, Damiana Eugenio, whose folklore series have sold out, and we're reprinting them again and again. And then after that, the scholarly books, particularly the social science ones and the humanities books. And then for the literary titles, fiction sells best. Okay, we prefer novels. If I can call, I can use the word preference, because novels are well, we need novels. This country has enough short stories, I think, short story collections, but not enough novels, particularly not enough good novels. So I will speak to you now about what the real problem I think of university publishing is. And strangely enough, it has little to do with this workshop, because you are actually creative writers are actually being pampered in the country in a way. It's academic writers who are not pampered at all, and that is why their manuscripts don't pass our evaluation process. We receive for every for every 5 manuscripts we receive, only one is actually academic. The 4 are literary. Do you understand that? And the very few academic manuscripts submitted, very few of them pass. The literary manuscripts, because there are more of them, somehow more of them pass, right? Because there are more of them being submitted. Okay. So I will say something about the UP Press and talk a little about this problem of academic writing, and then bring in, I think, in the end, what my dream novel is, speaking not as a publisher, but actually as a teacher of literature and myself a creative writer. I haven't written much fiction. The fiction I've written would be stories, not the novel yet. My dream is to write a novel someday. And I've written a lot of nonfiction and, of course, a lot of poetry, but not the novel yet. So you guys are ahead of the game, in the game, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, the UP Press was founded in 1965. It is our country's oldest academic publisher, not UST Press, because UST Press, yes, was a printing press that was established at the same time as the university, 1611, but it was not really an academic publisher. It was a printer of novenas and missals and confessionarios for the longest time. Okay, so the title of academic publisher or university press, the very first one in the country is UP Press, 1965. See, very recent, right? If you think about it, okay. What is the mandate of DP Press? It's to publish the best Filipino books in creative writing and scholarship. And after half a century and more than 1,000 books, it has solidified its position as the country's premier academic publishing house. I say that subjectively. Of course, I have to champion UP Press, but I think it's true. Okay. The enemy of any publisher, like the enemy of any writer, is illiteracy. In our case, this is an illiteracy that derives from our economic underdevelopment on one hand, and on the other, an abiding and residual orality whose history is immemorial in our islands and whose imperatives continue to inform our realities today. The plain truth is that Filipinos are not a bookish culture or people, and what this is partially meant is that we cannot really remember the way books, as well as the written language that constitutes books, remember. Now and then, it almost seems that we change our mind as easily as oral utterances change mouths or meanings. The urgent mission to commit ourselves to the ideals of national solidarity, for example, requires a bookish or textual rather than an oral memory. Getting more and more Filipinos to acquire the habit of bookishness is the toughest challenge that the UP Press faces. Actually, the whole educational system. It is the habit of bookishness. It is comparable, if not tantamount, to the monumental task of nation formation itself. As the official publishing house of our country's one and only national university, the UP Press clearly has an important role to play in this essential and unfinished project. And so do you. You're the writers. You're going to produce the books, right? Now we are in the business of publishing academic books mainly, but we publish literary titles, as I said. So I'd like to distinguish the two because from my experience, these kinds of manuscripts really are very different kinds of material, especially as we receive and process them. I don't mean that creative and scholarly works are different in their fundamental natures. Of course they are, if nature is the same thing as form. I mean that my editorial experience in the press has taught me that the quality of the submitted manuscript generally differs between these two compositional realms. Literary manuscripts are generally either accepted or rejected entirely. Right? There's no probably the the commercial press, and that's probably what Andrea will talk about. You submit a manuscript, it goes through a review, and then they will say, come meet with the editor because he or she has suggestions. Okay? With us, accepted or rejected. Okay? But for the academic manuscripts or the scholarly manuscripts, they're very rarely endorsed by our reviewers as they are. Quite often, they are not even endorsed, and those that are normally endorsed come with an express proviso from the typically aggravated reviewer that they be revised and improved, particularly where the aspect of their overall writtenness is concerned. What magnifies the chasm between creative and scholarly works that are submitted to UP Press is that, at least as far as I've seen them, the former easily outnumber the latter almost 4:1. You understand that? So the academic manuscripts that are submitted, they are conditionally passed. And they have para siyang thesis that has to be revised, goes through revision. That's why it takes a long time to put them out. That's why much as I'd like to have more academic titles out there, they are in the pipeline, they're being processed, but the ones that get processed faster are the literary manuscripts. Briefly, I'd like to share my thoughts with you on why this discrepancy exists. Bakit nga ba ang pangit-pangit in sitwasyon ng scholarly writing vis-a-vis creative writing? Do you need to hear this, or you just want me to talk about? Yeah, why not? Some of you might have ambitions to be teachers and to be researchers. Okay, on one hand, as I mentioned, there's the relative newness of literacy and the enduring orality that permeate Philippine social relations. Going by the evidence and the existing studies, there really are differences between the oral and chirographic or textual, between oral culture and then textual or chirographic culture. And they do bid us to be mindful of the possibility that the cognitive dissonances that afflict us as a society are at least partially the effects of this enduring or residual orality. Okay? In other words, the provisionality. So what are the qualities of the oral mind that actually still can be found in our society and that may explain why we're so fucked up, right? The provisionality of aggregated and repetitive memory, the mutability of categories, the resistance against abstraction, the agonism of narrativity. Narratives are hard to sustain, and it's a struggle, right? Okay, because narratives in the oral sense are always cumulative, and then, and then, right? You know, oral memory, right? And of course now we do flashbacks, right? Because we write, okay? The persistence of tactile and personalistic communal norms that effectively shut meritocracy out. All these observed and lamented qualities of our local and national realities are directly attributable to the residual but entirely powerful effects of oral consciousness, which obtains alongside the uneven functional literacy of the last 100 years of Philippine post-colonial history. Forget about the 333 years of Hispanization, we were illiterate, mostly. Only the Principalia had education beyond primary school. The public education made available by the Spaniards was parish or parochial education, which barely actually met the requirements for primary education. Most Filipinos then only memorized novenas and prayers, which is why we never learned Spanish. It was so easy to forget Spanish, okay? Because there was no public education. So, 100 years of literacy, that's not enough for literacy to really take root, okay, in a profound sense, which is what we need. So, orality can stay residual even centuries after the introduction of writing, and this is the evidence in Europe itself, okay. In the case of the Philippines, we can conclude that orality was really the dominant cultural mode, despite the inflated claims of the Hispanic archives that the Philippine Indios were mostly already literate at the time of the Conquista. It's important to remember that no acceptable evidence has ever been found to back the spurious claim that the native syllabary that minimally existed in the Philippine Islands was ever widespread, popular, pervasive, or even just uniformly operative during this period. Oh my God, woman is here who will probably argue to that. No? Okay. Instead, we have comparable accounts of general illiteracy as being the norm even among that class of local chieftains. Okay? Even the datus then couldn't quite sign. I mean, that was the evidence, you know, that's been remarked, that exists in some of the documents. So add to this the more recent attestations coming from anthropology and folklore studies, both of which provide more than ample proof of in terms as various as and cogent as oral epics, proverbs, epigrammatic poetry, riddles, etc. The whole Damiana Eugenio collection. And we get a relatively stable and clear picture of that equivocal dominance of the oral mode of consciousness in the country's colonial and pre-colonial past, and its residual but still significant presence in the Philippine present, which is still beset by the contradictions of this hybrid cultural condition. So, why are literary productions excelling? Because well, we had the ICWU participated in a seminar that was requested of us by then Chancellor Cesar Saloma to talk to the social scientists and the natural scientists of UP Diliman and help them write better. That seminar was called Writing in the Sciences and the Professions, and we all had to go up to Antipolo for a weekend, and share pleasantries and talk about creative writing, and talk to them about how to popularize whatever they're producing in their research. While the exciting things are group pondered and the resolve to find solutions to the problem of poor public dissemination as well as the deteriorating quality of academic writing by our graduate students and members of the faculty were undoubtedly important bequests of that experience. Personally speaking, I can say that it was an immense privilege just to be there, to meet and listen to some of our university's most brilliant and wonderful minds in the sciences. In the course of conversing with our colleagues across the disciplines, soon enough it occurred to me that one of the reasons creative writing is in a relatively good state in our country is that over the last half century, national writers' workshops, typically identified with the country's major schools, UP, Siliman, Ateneo de Manila University, University of Santo Tomas, De La Salle, Mindanao State University, have provided sustained and heartening institutional support. These workshops are national in scope, as well as intensely competitive. They are regarded in the literary community as prestigious, precisely for those reasons. As workshops, they also function as a means of according reward or recognition to young and promising writers, because the fellowships they offer are, in a manner of speaking, forms of endowment or grants. They provide a personally pleasing opportunity for aspiring writers to learn from and be in the company of published senior writers inside a space or occasion that is exclusively devoted to the otherwise solitary and sullen art of literary creation. As it has been practiced, the workshop format therefore makes learning the intricacies of creative writing at once interesting, gratifying, social, and fun. My wish is that someday various academic writing workshops will be held in earnest in this and in other universities. They should be, if they are to happen at all, they should be cluster-based tayo genre, right? Sa kanila dapat, academic writing workshops should be humanities, social sciences, right? Natural sciences. Without that kind of institutional support, I don't think we can expect scholarly academic writing to improve. And we need those works too, as much as we need the creative works. Okay? Now, I just want to leave my presentation, because all of this will be sort of like pointless to you, and tell you that our process in the press is pretty straightforward. We have a website. You can go to it and click on the link on how to be published, which is the same brochure I gave you. You submit your manuscript, okay? We don't. First of all, we don't entertain book proposals. Only complete manuscripts. So I think the difference with Andrea in Anvil is they actually can entertain book projects and book proposals. Meaning, you submit 2 chapters and probably an outline of how the novel's going to unfold, right? And so you don't have to waste your time. If no one's buying it, if they're not interested in it, then you probably don't have to bother. Okay? Which I think is a bad idea. Right? Flesh it out the way you want it. Don't compromise right away. Okay? So with UP Press, you submit the whole thing. You submit it in 3 hard copies, identical hard copies, accompanied by a cover letter. Okay? You submit it via courier. You can mail it to us, or you can submit it in person in the UP Press, which is just beside the College of Architecture. And initially, me and my deputy editor for editorial, Professor Los Baños, will look at the manuscript and do the initial screening there. We have to do that because we cannot trouble our editorial board members and our evaluators with every manuscript that we receive. Some of them are just some of the manuscripts just aren't worth vetting at all. Yeah, someone's juvenilia, someone's like diary. We receive all sorts of things. Okay, and then when we deem the manuscript to be worth processing, we submit it to the pertinent member of the editorial board, who will suggest to us external evaluators. We need 2 approvals at least for a manuscript to pass. Which is always good if you have 2 yeses or 2 nos, kasi tapos na yung problema. Pag may isang nag-yes, isang nag-no, we get a third one. You understand that? The third one will have a hard job, will have the difficult task of breaking the tie. And the third one will actually be furnished more or less the salient passages from the recommendation and from the rejection of the initial reviewers. Okay? When the manuscript is approved, then we begin the processing of the manuscript. You have to come to the press to submit the final draft of the manuscript in hard copy and also in soft copy. Okay? And then you are assigned a copy editor. There will be 2 copy editors. Okay? And then each time the copy editor finishes, copy editing, babalik sa'yo yung manuscript, and then you approve the corrections. Right? I think that is a very good, wonderful step because many times the writers actually don't see that they have problems pala, right? Mechanical problems, grammatical problems. Our editors are not literary editors really, although some of them can make stylistic comments, right? But generally, they don't touch your style, okay? Kasi pumasa ka na eh, right? And then the editing happens twice. Alright, by the last editing, wala nang changes dapat. Except for errors in facts or things like that. Okay? And then you have also a hand, or you will be consulted as far as the cover is concerned. We have in-house artists who do our covers, but they submit several studies all the time. So you get to choose and you get to make comments on how you want your cover to look. Okay. Um, what else, Regine? Well, how long does it take? Literary manuscripts can take as short as 2 months to process. Poetry in particular, kasi wala masyadong text yun, diba? Alright? Ang pinakamatagal i-process scholarly manuscripts kasi pag nagpa-fact check pa kami pabalik-balik, the bibliography has to be fixed. They're not following the Chicago Manual of Style, which is our style book. And then they change all the time. All these academic writers, they keep editing. They keep changing, all right? So the normal time for the academic book to come out is a year. The normal time for the literary title is 6 months. It can be as short as 2 months. Okay. Then we have 2 group launchings because we don't have enough budget to launch individually our books. We're publishing a lot. See, we cannot launch them separately. We have 2 main launchings. Our first one for this year is going to be in August 3. You're invited. It will be in the Balay Kalinaw at 5 p.m. And then the next one will be in late November. So we have 2 launchings scheduled for the year. We publish 25 new titles every year. Okay, but now including reprints, which we do a lot of because our books are being used in classrooms, thankfully. Okay, they're not really textbooks. You can't call them textbooks, but they have textbook applications and they're being used as reference books. So 35 titles a year, including the reprints. Okay. Now, personally, as I said, what is the kind of novel that I would like to read? See, I have no choice. If our editorial review approves it, even if I don't personally like it, it will come out. Okay? But when my term in the press ends, and if I get to be asked to evaluate, kaya lang, I'm not a novelist. I won't be asked unless I put out a good novel first. No? But, as a teacher, let's say, what would I recommend my students to read, right? I would recommend them to read, I think, a substantial novel. So that's my first requirement, substantial. Meaning nothing thin, nothing fluffy, okay? With realism that's more or less deep, which is hard to do in English, right? I'm speaking about the novel in English. See, I'm not speaking about the novel in Filipino because I haven't read enough. But the novel in English has to be deep because most of our novels in English are kind of not much blood between the boards. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Um, and the language is a problem too. I would like, seriously, we're all looking for that great Filipino novel, right? When Linochka's State of War arrived, I thought, this is it! And then, di pala. And then when My Sad Republic arrived, this is it! Di pala. Why? There's something lacking. And I can't really put my finger on it yet. History is the right track. I'm sure of that. There has to be a historiographic sort of foundation to it. But I think it's the language that's the problem. It does not come across as credible enough. And credibility has nothing to do with verisimilitude. It has something to do, but not all of it. It has to do, I think, with inventiveness and newness, right? Why can't a novel why can't we write that great Filipino novel in the many languages that are actually our reality? Why can't we read a novel that is not that is it has to be it has to win in the palanca, it has to win in a category that's not been invented yet of open language. The open language category for the novel, meaning every language. The way we talk, which shifts all the time from English to Sword Speak to Tagalog to whatever Bisaya if you're from the Visayas. Okay. Um, yes, probably that. And then we have that reality that is so hard to capture in the novel. And I think the novel existed, the origin of it kasi is really it's rooted in that, right? In the recreation of everyday life, in the grittiness of it, you know. So I'm seeking that. I think yung mga good novels natin, they're already aware of it. That's why they're probably skirting the issue and going metafictional. They're going all sorts of directions, right? Because it's hard to do it, and that's what I'm looking for. In the meantime, I'm willing to be entertained. There are so many other novels that are actually okay. You know, like Glenn's novel is an example, and of course, Scripts is always sort of wonderful to ask your students to read who are not aware that such a novel has been written. Okay, a novel like that. But I think if I read more of the novels in Filipino, June, I would be less disillusioned, no? Because we're publishing now RM Aplaon. He has that in spades. He has that rootedness. Lacking lang ng philosophy. I'm sorry. It's like, okay, so I want everything. Maybe you can have everything in one book. Okay? So, do you have any questions? Because there's nothing else I will say. There's nothing else to say. I just said, you just submit to UP Press. Remember, I get first dibs, right? I get to look at it first and read it and decide if it's worth getting vetted or not. So, but then I'm very, very sort of like easy to please on that level, right? I'm not too judgy there because I'm aware that we have to have an eclecticism, right? And there are very few novels being submitted anyway. That's why I'm really I'm just glad to get a manuscript that's a novel. Are you guys already finished writing your novels or are these novel ideas pa lang? Yung iba meron na. O yung mga tapos na, submit nyo na bukas. Unahin nyo na kami kaysa Anvil kasi yun, paparewrite pa yun. Papagawan pa kayo, lalagyan nyo pa yung mga elements of chiclet, yung mga bumibenta. Yung sa amin, the way you want your first novel to be, even if no one else will read it. I'm just kidding. Well, I did see, there's this masterclass that Margaret Atwood is offering, and she did say at the very end of it, if there's someone out there who will read your book. Meaning, there's always hope. There may be a reader for that strange novel after all, yes.
Sir, do you ever
Eric.
publish? Sir, do you ever publish graphic novels?
No. Not that we will never ever do it, but no one submitted yet. So try. Try. It has to be good though. Medyo ano ba? Ano ba? Yung very good one. Watchmen. Ganyan. Quality. Kaya yun. Kasi may philosophy yun. Kompleto yun. EJ.
Sir, ano yung bestsellers ng Press kung mabenta ba?
Sinabi ko na nga, di ba? Hindi ka nakikinig. Why are the folklore series of Damiana Eugenio selling like hotcakes? They're very thick anthologies. They cover 7 areas of folklore, proverbs, riddles, myths, folk tales, legends, folk songs, and I'm missing one more, I forget.
Hindi ko sabihin literary titles.
Novels na. Fiction, yes.
Like,
Gusto nila specific yung lista ng bestseller niyo.
Ganon. Parang formula.
Sino ang underwriters niyo?
No, June Cruz Reyes is our best-selling author in Filipino. Yes.
ginawang textbook yung mga yun.
Yun na, oo. Yung smaller and smaller circles was initially a UP Press book that got bought, right? But then it had to be rewritten and sort of thickened, right, for the international market. But I still like that early version of it. I'm so attached to it. But of course, the thick book is also amazing, diba? But we published Griselda Yaves, you know. We published my pride and joy of UP Press would be Gina Apostol's first book, Bibliolepsy, was published by UP Press.
It's out of
Okay,
print.
it's out of print. She took the book back, you know, because I think her own agent in America is trying to sell all her titles again, you know. So okay, that's another thing that's in the brochure that you have. Publishing agreement, you signed it with us, right? You own the copyright to your work, but the incarnated book is ours. Meaning yung edited, processed version sa amin yon. Hindi nyo makukuha yung soft file nun. Okay? Pero yung initial version nyo, yung mali-mali, maraming errors, sa inyo. Siyempre, pag napaganda na namin, amin na yun. Pero actually, it's your copyright. You are free to submit it to another publisher, not within the time that the print run is not finished yet, but after that, then the agreement dissolves automatically. Yes, you have a PJ.
Yeah, question. During the publishing process, do we have a main point of contact from the publisher, or how is correspondence?
An email normally, yeah. Yes, the editor assigned to you will actually be emailing you regularly. My deputy editor also. Now and then me, pag may problema. Pag nagwawala na kayo or something. Then, wala namang ganun masyado. Normally sa academic books may ganun. Pero sa literary titles, wala. Kasi nga pass or fail lang siya eh. Yes. Anything else? 15% the industry rate of the yes, the actual sale of the book.
So, wala na yung advance sa Israel.
Wala eh.
Kailangan mo nag-advance.
Pag mag-advance ng royalty kasi 10 years pa naman bago maubos yung libro mo eh. Lugi naman kami. Binayaran na namin yung royalty mo tapos hindi pa bumibenta yung libro 10 years pa. No, literal, basta novel hindi tumatagal. 2 years ganyan, ubos na siya. Yes. I think the novel of, I don't know what's happening to Bobbin's novel. I'll find out. It's selling well. People are so intrigued by it. You know what this novel is, right? Oh. See, that kind of novel that Anvil will not touch, with the 10-foot pole, UP Press will publish. Okay? So kung ganun klase yung novela ninyo, medyo out of the box, medyo hindi commercially appealing, medyo experimental, medyo radical, like may position, may ideological position siya, basta well-written. Kasi yun lang naman yung nahabol natin. Ano yung well-written? Itong workshop na to. Ang magsasabi sa inyo kung ano yun. And wala talagang rule, di ba? Kasi each project will require its own criteria on how to judge it. So your project will determine it, actually. Maybe I want to ask, what's the trend? Are they writing historical novels also? Personal, my God, spec-fic. Anyone doing spec-fic novels? 1, 2. Spec-fic as in non-realist. Maybe that's the hope eh. Go na lang spec kaya. Entirely spec. Because to write in English in the Philippines is to be speculative from the beginning, right? Because you're translating like crazy all the time. How do you handle the ones doing realist novels? Who are you? Realist novels. One. Are your worlds your own worlds? Middle class, English speaking, Anjali, YA. So your characters are like college students, teenagers. They're hanging out in Starbucks and whatever. They're Ingleseros, Ingleseras.
Well, the novel kasi is in English.
No, that's my question nga. Are they Ingleseros, Ingleseras and like, if you think about it, realism siya. So, dapat meron siyang, reputedly meron siyang, supposedly meron siyang counterpart sa realidad. Would they be found, what? And studying in Ateneo, ganyan?
Some of them.
O ganyan, okay. So, mag-English nga yan. Pero sino hindi sila nag-jeep, so hindi sila pwede kasi mahirap naman mag-English sa driver sa jeep. Yun na sinasabi ko, yung mga scenes na, yung outside the Anglophone circle that may realistically exist in the Philippines in very limited circumstances, paano mo i-capture yun? Di magta-translate ka na, awkward na yun, kakausapin mo yung banana cue vendor. Diba? I-report mo na lang yung action normally, no? Hindi mo na siya render as a scene, but that's a problem. See? Kung mag-Filipino na lang kasi kayo, diba? Walang problem.
Hindi rin. Pagka dinariwan ng Pilipino, wala rin bumibili. Sinising.
Kasi nga oral, kaya gano'n, hirap na hirap magbasa. Okay, can I tell you about something? It's really my passion. I'm very lucky that I am at the helm of the press when the complete epic series of the Panay Bukidnon people were submitted to UP Press to be printed. Ito ay proyekto na ni Professor Emeritus Alicia Magos ng UP Visayas. Binuno niya itong proyekto na to ng siguro 3 dekada, mahigit. Pabalik-balik, pumapanig sa mga bulubundukin ng Panay upang i-record ang mga epiko ng Panay Bukidnon. Meron silang 10 epics. And they have now been transcribed in their original ancient Kinaraya. Right? And if you we published the 7th book now. We're now moving to Humadapnon, which has 4 volumes. Right? The epics constitute a mega epic because the characters are all magkakamag-anak. Parang Mahabharata tayo, brothers, di ba? Mas mahaba pa siya sa Mahabharata. Isang isla lang siya po sa Pilipinas. So, meron tayong narrativity, meron tayong pagkikwento na sariling atin, na sana pagkuhanan natin ng inspirasyon bilang mga nobelista. Pagkat mas mahaba naman sa nobela yung 10 epics na yon. Diba? Makikita niyo doon ang quality of the oral sentence and the oral consciousness. Talaga ganun siya. Mag-move yung narration niya. Mahilig siya sa epic text, paulit-ulit. The main character's name is Labodongon. He has several nicknames. 5. Tapos, ang dami nga mga epithets. The Great One, mga iba-iba. Kaya gano'n, tsaka ang daming mga synonyms, tsaka ang daming mga adjectives. Kasi, habang nag-recite yung chanter, he buys time. Ano bang mangyayari sa kanya ngayon? So, pero nagsisimula na siya. So, ulit niya. Kaya gano'n, di ba? Pero may poetry, may music, at it's part, kasi ano siya, rhythmic siya eh. A rhythmic novel. Di ba? Why not? Inspired by the rhythms of our oral past. No? That still actually persists with us now. Why are we still oral now? We can think very categorically. We kick out the dictator and his family, and 10 years later, we welcome the back. Diba? A red light can be green. Natutuwa ako, nandun pa ba sa EDSA yung mga parang mga barriers, parang mga spends, kasi a simple sign is not enough. You really have, para tayong lab rats, we have to really be given the fence, right? Kasi nga very provisional, very negotiable. Okay? Ganun yung mga epics, no? The version that Landa Hocano recorded in 1960 of Humadapnon is different from the version now that's been recorded. Kasi yung nag-recite kay Hocano was a woman who is the grand aunt of the chanters of this epic now. But she's actually only related to the line of the epic chanters by marriage. So medyo bastardized version siya. They're purer. Yung, according to the Caballero brothers, purer sila. Kasi descended directly. Yung kay Hocano, babae kasi yung nag-chant, pareho yung essential plot ng adventure. Kaya lang yung details sa iba-iba. Mas, kasi babae siya, mas maraming detail ng pagkain. Yung things that are actually sort of nitty-gritty, which I think I prefer actually. The men are all for great adventure, the big things. You know. So why am I bringing this up? There's so much in our oral literature, it's an oxymoron, our orature. You cannot say oral literature because they cancel each other out. Orature, okay? There's so much in our orature that we can actually mine because those qualities can in fact illuminate how our lives are still unfolding now. Okay? Kwento ko na lang sa inyo yung first two books. Pwede? May time ba? Okay. The first book is called Tikum Kadum. It means black dog. And in the beginning, there's a Dadu who sets out to go to the forest, which he normally does, and says goodbye. So he says goodbye to his wife, and he brings with him his black dog, his pet dog. And for this particular trip to the forest, or journey to the forest, he takes a turn somewhere that leads him to a place that he's never been before. And in the middle of this sort of part of the forest, there's a grove, right? Where stands this very tall bamboo topped by a golden bell. And immediately he covets it. Right? Now, the dog is not just a dog. The dog is a person. The dog talks. So the dog says, "Don't you dare. Don't you see? It looks like someone owns it." Right? And he tells the dog, "You're just my dog. Why am I going to listen to you?" So he cuts it down. Immediately the monster appears. The owner of that bamboo and the bell. He's very hairy. He's what? Cannibal, man-eating monster. And so they duel, they battle. He barely makes it out of that forest alive. He goes back home. When he gets home, nandun na rin yung monster. He's a supernatural being. So the monster tells him in front of the wife, "Well, you should have listened to your dog." Okay? There is a tuos. Tuos means pact or vow. See, walang writing ng mga Panay Bukid nun. But they have the idea of how objects can embody memory. Right? So they decide, okay, kung wala tayong writing, di ba? Walang kasulatan. So, halimbawa, itong dahon na to, ibig sabihin, mahal kita. Intindihan nyo? Parang gano'n. So, yung bamboo na yan, ibig sabihin yan, sacred yung may-ari, at kung sino man ang tumawak dyan, mamamatay. Parang gano'n. That to us was given by the parents. So even the monster himself cannot break it. Right? So he says, okay, you have to die. Right? But then he sees that this family, this couple, has two lovely daughters. And then he thinks twice. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll come back tomorrow. I'll think about your sentence. I'll rethink it. Right? When he gets back the next day, right, he decides that rather than kill the Datu for his transgression, he will just get the two daughters, right, and give them to his spinster sister, who is childless. Her name is Amburukai. So first book yon. First book explains why the two daughters disappear. Because they are brought up as binukot or kept maiden by Amburukai inside her cave. Kasi she's a monster, right? She has a big cave. In the middle of the cave is a golden towerette. It's so funny. There has to be a towerette, not a tower, because a tower will not fit in a cave. So since it's a short tower, okay, made of gold. Alright, so that's in book 2, that's book 1. Book 2, another time na. You have the hero Labodonggon, who's at this point of the story, he's a young man, he's very handsome. He's playing his favorite guitar, a kujapi, which is an heirloom guitar. In the middle of a song, the central chord snaps. Right? And so he is so sad because nasira yung kanyang kujapi. And he says, how am I going to fix this? This is an heirloom guitar. You can't just buy the replacement anywhere. Okay? And then, we are introduced to the character of Taghoy. Taghoy has no body. Taghoy is like, parang, I don't know if you're old enough to remember was it a Safeguard commercial? Yung Konsensya? Yung bumubulong-bulong lang. Ganun siya. So Taghoy is this disembodied voice that the main characters have, not just him. No, even the heroines have their Taghoy. Okay? And the Taghoy tells him, don't be sad. I know the perfect replacement for that central chord, that string. There's only one possible replacement. It's the golden pubic hair of Amburukai. The pubic hair of the monster, right? From the first book, the female monster. And so he tells his parents, I have to fix this guitar, right? And the only replacement is this pubic hair from that monster. And the parents do what the dog did in the first book. Don't dare do such a thing, right? But he disobeys them. Anyway, in the middle of the night, when the parents are asleep, he breaks out of the house, goes to the cave. He's given a magic potion naman by Taghoy, which turns into a fog. Na anyone who breathes in the fog falls asleep, like really, really well. Okay? So Amburukai is not aware that in the middle of her sleep, this pubic hair is plucked from her by the hero. The hero of Labodonggon is a thief, okay? Takes the pubic hair. Right? And then, okay, the title of the second book is Amburukai because she is really the hero. She is the one who goes on a quest to recover her treasure. Yes. And it's a thickish book because she has to do this ritual again and again to recover her treasure. It's really nice. This world has 10 rivers, right? Or river systems, right? And the human settlements are situated all along the river banks, right? And so she doesn't know where to look, where to begin. So the method is that she has to, every morning, she has to find this perfect white rock by the river's bank, right? Squat on it and slap her vagina. Slap it, and then it's supposed to make a sound of the right kind of sound if the pubic hair is somewhere down that river. And the horrible chanter decides that she will fail 9 times. So that vagina is very, very, very sore. Very sore. Because by the 10th attempt, finally it resounds. Like it makes this wonderful sound, the sound she's been waiting for. And so she tracks down. She walks down the riverbank, and so she finds him strumming away on his kujapi, okay? And then, of course, there is a clause attached to the pubic hair. Anyone who touches it will die, and you have to die. All right? And the parents are telling him, why did you disobey us? Okay? And then he said, well, I was listening to this voice. Anyway, too late because the monster is there, and there is a consequence to your transgression. This is the Garden of Eden, you understand? The one forbidden thing, okay? So, and so, but Amburukai sees the Labodonggon, and he's very, very cute, like extremely cute, and he says, okay, I will commute your sentence. You don't have to die, just have to marry me. Diba? And so what happened? And Labodonggon says no, and the parents say yes. You disobeyed us, we will not see you get killed. Get married at hag. Okay? So what does he do? He makes talukbong sa hammock niya. Ayaw niyang bumangon sa hammock niya. This hero is reduced in fetal position sa kanyang hammock. Okay? In the middle of the night, Amburukai transports the house of Labodonggon to her cave. She's a sorceress, okay? So when they wake up, when time for the wedding, before that pala, she has a big gong, which is like the radio of the time. Wala naman silang radio pa talaga. But that gong when you hit the gong, everyone will hear. Absolutely everyone in the world. And it doesn't make a gong sound. It actually talks. So the gong, when she hit the gong, everyone hears the announcement. Ang Buruka is getting married to Labao Donggon. So the poor Labao Donggon gets humiliated. Well, what he did was humiliating too. I mean, to steal someone's beauty care, right? So he has to be humiliated in what? Almost like equally. But all the women, all the beautiful women say, why that hag? They've been flirting na pala with him, hindi niya pinapansin. So anyway, in the end, okay, the wedding ceremony is about to start. Instead of the hag, lo and behold, all right, the two daughters, remember them? The more beautiful of them, Matang Ayon, who gets married to Labao Donggon, descends from the towerette, and she's the one who gets married pala. Because the mother just secured the right husband for her daughter. Okay, why am I bringing... And then the ending of that is the mother says goodbye to the daughters, tells the daughter, you have to go to the human world now because you are human, I am a monster, I stay in my cave, you go to the human world. And of course the daughters are crying because they've only known her as the mother, the parent. Okay? So why is this important to read for us to appreciate? You understand, this world recognizes, like our own world, like they recognize duality. There is good and evil, there's the hero, the villain, there's night and day, there is young and old, handsome and ugly, etc. But the epic intuition yearns towards unity, transcendence. Very complex vision that Labao Donggon, the hero, is a thief, and ang Boracay, the monster, is a benevolent mother. I wonder if we can infuse our novels with the same complexity.
This will be UP Press first graphic novel.
I wish it would be hard to turn the Boracay book into anything graphic.
With a title like The Bulbul Stealer.
Pwede. No, but I have to tell you, UP Visayas has been holding these national conferences on the epics. And in the second one, a couple of years ago, they wanted to use the epics for in mother tongue education. And so there were representatives of public schools. I had a hard time figuring out a way to teach ang Boracay. The second book, because how do you teach Bulbul? So, well, someone actually did had the dramatization of the second book in Iligay noon, and then it was being read interpretively. And then, of course, because I don't know Ilonggo, it sounded okay. But people were squirming like that beside me. And then someone told me, who's bilingual, who knew Ilonggo and Filipino, said, Sir, para po siyang sumisigaw ng puke, bulbul. Kasi yung ganun yung line ni ang Boracay. When she keeps saying, bulbul ko, meron na ako ng bulbul ko. Bulbul talaga siya. Tapos puke talaga, puke. Now, what does it mean? In the olden days, wala talaga siya malice. Diba? And listen, it's gold. The most precious substance in this world is gold. Your sexuality is precious. Your genitals are pure. They are not dirty. And of course, when this was being chanted, probably nagtatawanan din sila kasi ini-imagine na yung matanda naghuhugas ng pekpek sa river, di ba? Nakita nila siguro talaga yun that this is being done, right? Anyway.
How many generations of storytellers do you think?
9. Na-trace nila 9.
Ang nag-that? 9 generations.
9 generations. Yung straight sa family na yun.
2 centuries.
But I think Professor Magos has already determined similarities of those stories with a lot of Indonesian. Nakalink tayo sa Indo-Malay world. Those epics are proof. Together with the Bornean. Tapos yung mga stories na yan, kakarugtong sila. Mhm. So anyway, why did I say these things? Because your novels are, I'm sure, very sophisticated, and very contemporary, and very now. But you see, you can't poo-poo what our ancestors had accomplished, because they had this vision of life that's probably more generous. You can't judge much, di ba? Given the complexity, I can't tell you the plot summary of the other novels, the other epics, baka hindi nyo nabilin. Bilhin mo. Pero makikita nyo paulit-ulit, duality is transcended. Transcended. Duality is recognized. May nag-aaway, may nagpapatayan, may mga nagkakagulo, may injustice. But the appeal is towards harmony all the time. Maybe yun ang problema rin natin, di ba? Kaya yung ating heritage from that past, no? The oral memory can probably capture the unity rather than the duality. So anyway, you have no more questions? I wonder what Andrea and the other will say. We'll talk about, probably the sellable titles. No? So our sellable titles are the folklore titles, and academic titles also sell, and the fiction titles, particularly the novels. Yes. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
Bago po tayo tuloy ang matapos, tinatawagan ko po si Sir Carson para i-award ng ating certificate of recognition para kay